Power corrupts, they say, but what they don't mention is how the smallest taste of it can turn a man into something monstrous. Give someone a clipboard and a velvet rope, and watch how quickly they begin to play God at the gates of their tiny kingdom. But here's the thing about gates. They swing both ways, and sometimes the people you keep out are the very ones who hold the keys to tear down your entire fortress. Dion Big D Marshall didn't see federal agents when that black couple approached the entrance of Apex Nightclub on a warm Saturday night in Atlanta. He saw a threat to his carefully curated aesthetic. The man wore dark jeans and a simple button-down, the woman a modest cocktail dress from TJ Maxx. What Dion didn't see was the pocket-sized digital recorder in her purse, already running. He didn't see the 18 months of surveillance data they'd compiled on this establishment. He didn't see the subpoenas being drafted, the bank records being analyzed, the tax evasion case being built, brick by methodical brick. He saw what his prejudice permitted: two people who didn't match his vision of Apex's clientele, and therefore didn't deserve entry. Watch what happens when gatekeeping meets its reckoning, because this unraveling is something to witness. Apex Nightclub occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse in the Buckhead district, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, with bass-heavy music that you could feel in your sternum from half a block away. Inside, it smelled like overpriced vodka, designer cologne applied too liberally, and the particular mix of sweat and ambition that characterized Atlanta's upwardly mobile nightlife scene. The crowd skewed young, moneyed, and conspicuously image-conscious, the kind of place where bottle service started at $600, and the bathroom attendant expected tips in 20s, not singles. Dion Marshall, 34, stood at the velvet rope like a troll guarding a bridge. He was 6'5", 280 pounds of gym-built muscle, just starting to soften around the middle, with a shaved head that gleamed under the security lights, and a neck so thick it seemed to merge directly into his shoulders. He wore all black, tactical pants, tight t-shirt stretched across his chest, boots that added another inch to his intimidating height. But it was his eyes that marked him as dangerous. Small, mean, constantly assessing who was worthy and who wasn't. He had a habit of stroking his goatee when he was about to deny someone entry, a little tell that the regulars had learned to recognize as the prelude to rejection. What made Dion particularly odious was his complete lack of self-awareness about his own position in the hierarchy. He was an employee, paid $45,000 a year, plus cash tips from grateful patrons he'd waved through. But he carried himself like he owned the place. He'd been working the door at Apex for 3 years, and in that time, he'd developed a reputation. If you didn't look right, didn't dress right, didn't radiate the particular brand of wealth and status that Dion associated with Apex's brand, you weren't getting in. And didn't look right had a very specific meaning that everyone understood, but nobody said out loud. The data would later show that Dion denied entry to black patrons at a rate of 67%, compared to 12% for white patrons. He let in mixed groups readily, let in black women who met his narrow standards of conventional attractiveness. But black couples? Black groups of men? He found reasons. The dress code, the capacity, the vibe. Always something. Marcus and Simone Whitfield approached the entrance at 10:47 p.m., their hands loosely intertwined, looking exactly like what they were, a married couple in their late 30s, enjoying a rare night out. Marcus was 38, with warm brown skin, close-cropped hair showing the first hints of gray at the temples, and the kind of quiet, assessing stillness that came from 20 years of law enforcement work. He wore dark jeans, brown leather shoes, and a charcoal button-down with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. Nothing flashy, nothing that violated any reasonable dress code. Simone was 37, darker skinned than her husband, with natural hair styled in a twist-out and minimal makeup that emphasized rather than masked her features. Her dress was navy blue, knee-length, purchased on clearance because she'd learned long ago that spending money on clothes that might get ruined during surveillance operations was foolish. Simple gold earrings, a wedding band, sensible heels. She looked like a school teacher or a social worker, or any of 100 respectable professions. She looked, in other words, like someone who absolutely belonged anywhere she chose to be. They were both Criminal Investigation Division special agents with the Internal Revenue Service, assigned to the Atlanta field office. Marcus specialized in money laundering and organized crime tax evasion. Simone's expertise was cash-intensive businesses and structuring violations. Together, they'd built cases that had resulted in $47 million in recovered tax revenue and 17 felony convictions in the past 5 years. And Apex Nightclub had been on their radar for 18 months, flagged after a confidential informant, a former bartender fired for refusing to participate in the scheme, had walked into their office with records showing systematic underreporting of cash receipts, offshore accounts, and what appeared to be a sophisticated tax fraud operation running through the club's books. But tonight wasn't official. Not yet. Tonight was what they called a casual observation visit, documenting the scene, understanding the operation, gathering atmospheric details that would help contextualize the financial evidence when they eventually moved in with warrants. The digital recorder in Simone's purse was perfectly legal. They were in public, and Georgia was a one-party consent state. Everything they saw, everything they heard, could become evidence. Marcus had grown up in College Park, the son of a mechanic and a nurse, and he'd watched his parents scrimp and save and pay every cent they owed in taxes, while businesses in their neighborhood operated in cash-only shadows. It had made him righteous about tax enforcement in a way that some of his colleagues found excessive. Simone, raised in Savannah by a grandmother who'd cleaned houses for wealthy families, had her own reasons for believing that the rules should apply equally to everyone. They'd met at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, bonded over shared values and a mutual appreciation for procedural correctness, and built a partnership, professional and personal, that had proven formidable. As they approached the velvet rope, Simone felt Marcus's hand tighten slightly on hers. A warning. He'd spotted the look on Dion's face, that assessing calculation that meant trouble. Dion's hand went to his goatee, stroking it slowly. His eyes traveled from Marcus's shoes to his face, lingered on Simone's dress, then moved to the line behind them, 3 white couples in similarly casual attire, laughing and taking selfies. "We're at capacity," Dion said flatly, not even bothering with the pretense of checking a list. Marcus and Simone exchanged a glance. They'd expected this. It was, in fact, part of why they were here. The informant had mentioned that the bouncer was selective about clientele, and selective usually meant discriminatory, and discrimination often correlated with other kinds of rule-breaking. "We'll wait," Marcus said evenly. His voice was low, authoritative, the kind that came from years of conducting interviews and interrogations. "It's going to be a while," Dion replied, his tone making it clear that a while meant never. "That's fine," Simone added. "We don't mind waiting." Behind them, one of the white couples stepped forward, and Dion's demeanor transformed. His hand dropped from his goatee. A smile appeared. "Hey, y'all have a great night," he said warmly, unclipping the velvet rope and gesturing them through. The couple hadn't been on any list, hadn't shown identification, hadn't done anything except be white and dressed in clothes nearly identical to what Marcus and Simone were wearing. "Interesting," Marcus said quietly, but loud enough for Dion to hear. "They just got here." Dion's jaw tightened. "They're on the list." "What list?" Simone asked, her voice pleasant, curious. We'd be happy to add our names. Private list, Dion said, stepping forward, using his bulk to intimidate. Look, I don't think this is y'all's kind of spot. Maybe try somewhere else. There it was, not explicit enough to be actionable on its own, but clear enough in its meaning. The couple behind Marcus and Simone, young, white, the woman in jeans and a crop top, shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware they were witnessing something ugly. "And what kind of spot is this?" Marcus asked. He hadn't moved, hadn't backed down an inch. His voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath now. Dion rolled his shoulders, a gesture somewhere between stretching and threatening. "The kind that has a dress code. Your shoes don't meet our standards." Marcus looked down at his brown leather Oxfords, clean, polished, perfectly appropriate for any establishment that didn't require formal wear. "These are leather dress shoes." "Yeah, well, we require black shoes." Dion was improvising now, making up rules on the spot. "There's no posted dress code indicating that," Simone observed, nodding toward the entrance where a simple sign listed only, "No athletic wear, no shorts, no flip-flops. Management reserves the right to refuse service." "It's an internal policy," Dion snapped. His voice was rising now, drawing attention from the line. A group of young women filming TikTok videos had turned their phones toward the confrontation. A rideshare driver dropping off passengers had paused, watching. "I'd like to speak to the manager about this internal policy," Marcus said, "since it seems to be applied rather selectively." That was the trigger. The word selectively carried weight, implied knowledge, suggested this wasn't just a disappointed customer, but someone who understood what was really happening. Dion's face darkened. "You calling me racist?" "I'm calling your application of the dress code inconsistent," Marcus replied, "which is a factual observation based on watching you admit 3 couples after telling us you're at capacity." "I don't have to explain shit to you," Dion snarled, stepping closer, invading Marcus's space. The smell of energy drinks and protein powder wafted from him. "You're not getting in. Move along before I have you removed from the property." Simone's hand moved subtly to her purse, adjusting the position to ensure the recorder was capturing everything clearly. Her face remained calm, almost curious, like she was observing a fascinating specimen of human behavior. "Removed how?" she asked softly. "Are you planning to put your hands on us?" "If I have to," Dion said, his hand moving toward Marcus's chest. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Marcus said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "That would constitute assault, and given that we've committed no crime and you've failed to provide any legitimate reason for denying us entry beyond vague and inconsistently applied policies, you'd be opening yourself to both criminal charges and civil liability." The legal language should have been a warning, should have made Dion pause and reconsider. But Dion Marshall had been getting away with this behavior for 3 years, protected by management that preferred his discrimination to empty tables, and confidence built on impunity is hard to shake. "Oh, you a lawyer now?" Dion mocked. "Let me guess, you gonna sue me?" His laugh was nasty, performative. "Get the fuck out of here before I make you leave." The TikTok girls were definitely recording now. The rideshare driver had his phone out. A couple leaving the club had stopped to watch, drawn by the commotion. "We're on a public sidewalk," Simone noted. "We have every right to be here." "Not for long," Dion said, and his hand shot out, gripping Marcus's shoulder hard enough to leave marks. That was the moment, the catastrophic error. The point where Dion's night, his job, and the entire club's future pivoted from salvageable to demolished. Marcus didn't pull away, didn't escalate, just looked down at Dion's hand on his shoulder, then back up at his face. "You've just committed assault on a federal agent. I'm going to give you one opportunity to remove your hand and step back." Dion's laugh was sharp, disbelieving. "Federal agent, right. And I'm the president." "I'm serious," Marcus said. His voice carried absolute certainty now. "My name is Marcus Whitfield. I'm a special agent with IRS Criminal Investigation. This is Special Agent Simone Whitfield. You're currently interfering with federal officers, and I strongly suggest—" "Save that bullshit," Dion interrupted, his grip tightening. "IRS agents don't look like you. They're old white dudes with pocket protectors. You think I'm stupid?" And there it was again. The quiet part said loud, "IRS agents don't look like you." The assumption that federal law enforcement was white by default, that people who looked like Marcus and Simone couldn't possibly hold positions of authority. A new voice cut through the tension. "D, what the hell is going on out here?" Tyler Hammond, the club's general manager, emerged from the entrance. He was 29, white, with styled hair and a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He managed Apex for the owner, Marcus Levy, and his primary job was keeping the money flowing and the problems quiet. "These two trying to get in? Claiming they're federal agents or some shit," Dion said, still holding Marcus's shoulder. "I'm handling it." Tyler's eyes moved between Dion, Marcus, and Simone, and the growing crowd of phone-wielding witnesses. His expression suggested he knew this was bad, but hadn't yet grasped how catastrophically bad. "Folks, I apologize for any confusion," Tyler began, his tone professionally soothing. "We do have capacity limits and—" "Your bouncer just assaulted me," Marcus said calmly, "and denied us entry based on fabricated dress code violations, while admitting multiple parties who arrived after us and were dressed identically. This is being recorded by multiple witnesses. I would strongly recommend you verify our credentials before this escalates further." Tyler's smile faltered. "Verify your—" Simone pulled out her federal credentials, the leather wallet with the gold badge, the identification card with her photograph, and the seal of the Department of the Treasury. She held it up where Tyler and Dion and every phone camera could see it clearly. "Special Agent Simone Whitfield, IRS Criminal Investigation Division," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent sidewalk. "Badge number 4782, Atlanta Field Office." Marcus produced his own credentials with his free hand, Dion's grip having gone slack on his shoulder. "Special Agent Marcus Whitfield, badge number 4703. The color didn't just drain from Dion's face. It evacuated like someone had pulled a plug. His mouth opened and closed silently. His hand fell away from Marcus's shoulder as if burned. Tyler's professional composure shattered. His eyes went wide, pupils dilating in something close to panic. "Oh shit. Oh Jesus, this is... Dion, what the fuck?" "I didn't know," Dion stammered. "How was I supposed to know? They didn't say anything, they just—" "We attempted to enter your establishment as ordinary patrons," Marcus said. "We were denied entry based on false dress code claims and subjected to assault when we questioned the inconsistent application of your policies. All of this has been recorded." He gestured to the crowd, where at least 8 phones were still capturing every moment. "This is a huge misunderstanding," Tyler said, his voice rising with desperation. "Please, let's go inside. We can discuss this. I can get Mr. Levy on the phone." "We don't need to go inside," Simone said. Her voice remained pleasant, but there was something inexorable about it now, like water finding its way downhill. "We've seen everything we needed to see out here. The discrimination, the assault, the pattern of selective enforcement." She paused. "Though I should mention that we're currently conducting an investigation into this establishment's financial practices, tax compliance issues, and what happened here tonight has provided us with additional avenues of inquiry regarding your hiring practices and civil rights compliance." Tyler's face went from pale to gray. "Investigation? What investigation?" "The one that's been ongoing for 18 months, Marcus said. "Systematic underreporting of revenue, structured cash deposits to avoid reporting requirements, offshore accounts, fraudulent deductions. We've been building the case quietly, but I think after tonight, we might accelerate our timeline." Dion was backing away now, his swagger completely evaporated, replaced by the jerky movements of someone whose brain couldn't quite process the scale of his mistake. "I was just doing my job. I didn't know. You should have said something." "Said something?" Simone's voice was sharp now, cutting. "We shouldn't have to prove our worth to enter a public business. We shouldn't have to flash credentials to receive basic respect. The fact that you think we should have identified ourselves reveals exactly the problem. You didn't see federal agents, you saw black people, and you decided we didn't belong." One of the TikTok girls spoke up, her voice carrying in the shocked silence. "I got all of it on video. Want me to send it to you?" "Please," Simone said, pulling out a business card. "Email it to this address. It'll become part of the investigation file." Within 6 hours, the videos had gone viral. By Sunday morning, #Apex Nightclub was trending on Twitter. By Monday, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution had called Tyler Hammond for comment. By Tuesday, protesters were outside the club demanding answers. And by Wednesday, Marcus and Simone Whitfield walked back into Apex, this time through the front door, with a team of 8 federal agents, armed with search warrants that authorized the seizure of every financial record the establishment possessed. The investigation that followed was devastating in its thoroughness. IRS CI didn't just examine Apex's books. They excavated them, layer by layer, uncovering a fraud scheme that was almost artistic in its complexity. The headline numbers: $12.7 million in unreported revenue over 4 years. Owner Marcus Levy had been running a sophisticated cash skimming operation, collecting money at the door and the bar, reporting only about 40% of actual receipts. The rest flowed into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands through a shell company called Nightlife Management Solutions, LLC. But the evidence presentation came from another IRS agent, Senior Special Agent Deirdre Washington, who'd been working financial crimes for 23 years and had a reputation for building airtight cases. She was a short, round black woman with gray locks and reading glasses on a chain, and she arrived at the formal hearing with 3 banker's boxes of documentation. "Let's start with the basic numbers," Deirdre said, addressing the administrative law judge overseeing the civil portion of the case. Apex Nightclub reported annual revenues averaging $2.1 million for the years 2020 through 2023. Our analysis of seized records, surveillance data, and informant testimony suggests actual revenues averaged $5.3 million annually. She pulled out a spreadsheet. Here's the beautiful part. They were actually keeping 2 sets of books, the official books for the IRS and the real books for Mr. Levy. We found the real books on an encrypted laptop in Mr. Levy's home office. Not encrypted well enough, obviously. The judge, a stern woman named Harriet Kozlowski, who'd seen every tax scam imaginable in her 30 years on the bench, leaned forward. "Continue." "The skimming worked like this," Deirdre explained. "Cash collected at the door and at the bar would be split. Portion A went into the register and got reported. Portion B went into a safe in the manager's office. Every Sunday night, Mr. Hammond, that's the general manager, would take portion B to a check-cashing business on Ponce de Leon Avenue. The business would convert the cash to money orders, taking a 3% fee. Mr. Hammond would then deposit the money orders into accounts at 3 different banks, all under the name Nightlife Management Solutions. From there, the money was wired to the Cayman accounts." She pulled out another document. "We've got bank records showing $8.2 million flowing through this structure over 4 years. We've got testimony from 2 former employees who participated in the scheme. We've got video surveillance we obtained via subpoena showing Mr. Hammond making these deposits. and we've got the encrypted laptop with the real numbers. The criminal case against Marcus Levy and Tyler Hammond went to trial 8 months after that Saturday night confrontation. The trial lasted 3 weeks and included testimony from the Whitfields about what they'd observed during their casual visit, including Dion's assault and the discriminatory door policy that had triggered closer scrutiny of the entire operation. The moment Marcus described Dion's statement, "IRS agents don't look like you," the jury shifted uncomfortably in their seats. When Simone testified about the systematic pattern of black customers being denied entry, cross-referenced with the club's own security footage showing the racial composition of admitted patrons, 2 jurors shook their heads visibly. But the real kill shot came when prosecutors played the audio from Simone's pocket recorder. Crystal clear, perfectly admissible under Georgia's one-party consent law, it captured everything. Dion's fabricated dress code excuse, his escalating aggression, his dismissive mockery of their federal credentials, and, most damningly, his statement that federal agents couldn't look like them. The defense tried to argue that the tax evasion and the door discrimination were separate issues, that one didn't prove the other. The judge shut that down quickly. A pattern of illegal conduct is relevant to establishing willfulness, she ruled. If the defendants were willing to violate civil rights law so blatantly, it supports the prosecution's theory that they were equally willing to violate tax law. Marcus Levy was convicted on 14 counts of tax evasion, 3 counts of structuring financial transactions to evade reporting requirements, and 1 count of conspiracy. Tyler Hammond was convicted on 7 counts as a co-conspirator. The sentencing hearing was even more brutal. Levy got 63 months in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, and was ordered to pay $3.8 million in back taxes, penalties, and interest. Hammond got 36 months and was permanently banned from working in any financial management role. But the civil rights component hit harder in some ways. The Department of Justice filed a separate pattern and practice lawsuit against Apex Nightclub itself, and the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from 18 months showed that black patrons were denied entry at 4.7 times the rate of white patrons, despite making up only 31% of those who attempted entry. Dress code violations were cited for black customers 89% of the time, but for white customers only 11% of the time, despite identical attire. The consent decree forced the club to close for 6 months, implement new anti-discrimination training, hire an independent civil rights monitor, and pay $450,000 in damages to identified victims of discrimination. But really, the club was finished. The publicity had destroyed its reputation. The criminal convictions had tainted the brand. When it finally did reopen under new ownership and a new name, it lasted 4 months before closing permanently. The space is now a yoga studio. Dion Marshall faced his own reckoning. He was fired within 48 hours of the incident, once the videos went viral and the club's lawyers realized he was a massive liability. He was never charged criminally for the assault. Marcus and Simone decided not to press charges, seeing his professional destruction as sufficient. But he was named as a defendant in the civil rights lawsuit. He settled for $75,000, money he didn't have, resulting in wage garnishment for the next 8 years. His reputation in Atlanta's nightlife industry was radioactive. No club, no bar, no venue would hire him. He tried to get work as private security, but background checks turned up the lawsuit and the viral videos. He ended up taking a job as a warehouse supervisor for a logistics company, making $38,000 a year. 3 years after that Saturday night, a local reporter did a follow-up story. She found Dion living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Decatur, 40 pounds heavier, his gym membership long since canceled due to cost. He'd agreed to an interview hoping to rehabilitate his image, but he spent most of it insisting he'd been set up. "They should have identified themselves immediately," he told the reporter. "They were trying to catch me in something. It's not fair." When the reporter pointed out that he'd denied entry to hundreds of black patrons before the Whitfields, that the statistics showed a clear pattern, Dion's response was telling. "I was just following management's preferences. They wanted a certain type of crowd. I was doing my job." Even then, 3 years later, he still didn't understand that management's preferences for a certain type of crowd was the exact definition of illegal discrimination. He still saw himself as the victim of a setup, rather than the perpetrator of systematic civil rights violations. The reporter asked him if he'd learned anything. Dion thought for a long moment, then said, "I learned that you can't trust people. They'll smile in your face and destroy your life." The irony, that he was describing his own behavior from the other side, apparently didn't register. Marcus and Simone Whitfield, meanwhile, used the case as the foundation for a broader initiative within IRS CI. They developed training protocols on recognizing discrimination as a potential indicator of other compliance issues, based on the theory that businesses willing to violate civil rights law often had fewer qualms about violating tax law. The Whitfield Protocol, as it became known internally, led to 17 additional investigations over the next 3 years, resulting in $67 million in recovered revenue. Marcus was promoted to Supervisory Special Agent. Simone received the IRS Commissioner's Award for her work on the Apex case. They gave occasional interviews about the incident, always careful to frame it not as a personal victory, but as an example of systemic problems requiring systemic solutions. In one interview with NPR, Simone said something that crystallized the whole affair. "The assumption that we didn't belong, that we couldn't possibly be federal agents, couldn't possibly have authority, couldn't possibly deserve respect, that assumption cost them everything. But here's what people need to understand. We shouldn't have needed to be federal agents to deserve basic dignity. Every person who walked up to that door deserved not to be profiled. We just happened to be the ones who had the resources and authority to make sure there were consequences." The story became a case study in business schools, in civil rights seminars, in federal law enforcement training. It appeared in textbooks and workshops. It became a cautionary tale about the intersection of discrimination, tax evasion, and catastrophically poor judgment. Because here's the truth that Dion Marshall never learned, and Marcus Levy learned too late. Prejudice is expensive, not just morally, not just ethically, but materially, financially, catastrophically expensive. Every assumption costs you something. Every time you decide someone doesn't belong based on how they look, you risk everything. Dion saw a black couple in ordinary clothes and decided they weren't worth his respect. That decision cost him his career, his reputation, and $75,000 he'll be paying off until he's in his 40s. It cost Marcus Levy 5 years of his life in federal prison and nearly $4 million. It cost Tyler Hammond 3 years and his entire career trajectory. It cost Apex Nightclub its existence, all because 2 federal agents showed up in jeans and a cocktail dress, and the gatekeeper couldn't imagine that power might come in a package that didn't match his limited expectations. So here's my question for you. Do you think the consequences fit the crimes? Should Dion have faced criminal charges for the assault? Or was professional and financial ruin enough? And have you ever been profiled, underestimated, or excluded based on assumptions about who you are or what you're capable of? Drop your stories in the comments. I want to hear how you handled it. If this story of judgment and justice resonated with you, crush that like button. If you want more stories about prejudice meeting its match and assumptions leading to destruction, Join us by subscribing. And turn on those alerts so you never miss when we break down the next case of someone who learned, far too late, that you can't judge a book by its cover, especially when that book contains federal regulations and the power to audit your entire life into ruins.